Money is merely a tool. Power is eternal. But what kind of power truly changes the course of history? Whether it's the pure gold of the 14th century or the stocks of the 21st century, money is ultimately just a means for people to assert their existence. But at this age, perhaps we understand that true wealth doesn't lie in the amount of gold we possess, but in the peace of mind we find when reflecting on what we have contributed. We are living in the age of trillion-dollar fortunes. Every day, headlines are filled with the name of Elon Musk, a man whose wealth can rise or fall by billions overnight, simply because investors believe in the future he promises. But 700 years ago, there was another man whose wealth moved the world in a far more physical way. A king from West Africa named Mansa Musa. When he traveled across the desert in the year 1324, carrying unimaginable amounts of gold, entire economies trembled behind him, not because of speculation, not because of stock prices, but because he possessed something the world could touch with its own hands. Gold. Real gold. Tonight, we place these two men side by side. One built an empire from the ancient wealth buried beneath the earth. The other built an empire from human belief in tomorrow. One ruled over gold mines. The other rules over expectation. And perhaps the most fascinating question is not who was richer, but which kind of power truly shapes history. The weight of gold, or the power of human imagination. 700 years ago, while much of Europe struggled through famine, war, and fragile kingdoms, there existed an empire in West Africa so rich that most of the world barely understood it. The Mali Empire, a land connected by endless caravan routes, stretching across the Sahara like arteries carrying the lifeblood of global trade. And buried beneath its soil was gold, an unimaginable amount of gold. In the 14th century, nearly half of the world's known gold supply flowed from the mines of Mali, Bambouk, Bour, Galam. These were not simply mines. They were the financial heart of entire civilizations, and above them all stood one man, Mansa Musa. People today call him the richest man in history, but even that description feels too small. Because Musa was not merely wealthy, he controlled the source itself. Kings taxed gold, empires traded for gold, wars were fought for gold. But Musa ruled the land that produced it. His fortune did not depend on investors, or public opinion, or stock markets. It came directly from the earth, solid, physical, untouchable. And unlike modern billionaires whose wealth can disappear overnight, Mansa Musa possessed something far more terrifying, a resource the entire world already agreed had value. When Musa moved gold across continents, economies reacted, not emotionally, physically, because in his hands, gold was not luxury, it was power itself. If Mansa Musa represented the power of tangible wealth, then Elon Musk represents something entirely different. A new kind of empire, an empire built not from gold buried beneath the earth, but from human belief in the future. Unlike ancient kings, Musk does not sit atop mountains of physical treasure. His fortune does not exist inside vaults filled with gold. It lives inside stock markets, inside investor confidence, inside the idea that tomorrow can be bigger than today. Tesla became one of the most valuable companies in the world, not because it produced the most cars, but because millions believed electric vehicles would dominate the future. SpaceX became revolutionary, not because space travel was profitable today, but because people believed Musk could reshape humanity's destiny itself. And that is what makes modern wealth so strange. Its power is psychological, invisible, fragile. If fear spreads through the market, billions can disappear overnight. If confidence weakens, Fortunes evaporate like smoke. And yet, this kind of power may be even more influential than gold, because gold can buy nations, but belief can move civilizations. In many ways, Musk understood something ancient rulers never fully could. The modern world is no longer controlled only by resources. It is controlled by attention, by narrative, by the ability to convince millions of people to believe in the same future at the same time. And in the 21st century, that may be the most powerful currency of all. In the year 1324, Mansa Musa began a journey that would become legendary across the ancient world. His destination was Mecca, but what followed looked less like a pilgrimage and more like the movement of an entire civilization. Historical records describe a caravan so enormous that people struggled to comprehend it. Tens of thousands of servants, soldiers, merchants, officials, and stretching across the Sahara Desert, hundreds of camels carrying gold, not symbolic wealth, not promises, real gold. Everywhere Musa traveled, he gave it away freely, to the poor, to scholars, to rulers, to entire cities. And when his caravan reached Cairo, something extraordinary happened. The amount of gold entering the city became so overwhelming that the value of gold itself began to fall. Prices changed, markets destabilized. Inflation spread through Egypt for years afterward. Think about that for a moment. One man, simply by traveling and distributing wealth, managed to affect the economy of an entire region. Even today, economists still study the event as one of the most dramatic examples of wealth concentration in human history. Because Mansa Musa possessed a form of power almost unimaginable in the modern age, the ability to physically move global value with his own hands, not through tweets, not through media, not through speculation, but through gold so vast that entire economies bent beneath its weight.
It is magnificent.
There is something deeply strange about modern wealth. In the ancient world, power had weight. You could touch it. Gold, land, armies, ships. When Mansa Musa moved wealth across continents, people saw it with their own eyes. Camels bending beneath the weight of gold, markets overflowing with physical riches, entire economies reacting to material reality. But in the modern world, power often exists as information, invisible, psychological, instant. Today, a single message posted online by Elon Musk can shake financial markets across the planet within minutes. Cryptocurrency prices rise, stocks surge or collapse. Billions appear, then disappear. Not because factories exploded, not because gold mines were discovered, but because human emotion shifted. That may be the greatest difference between ancient wealth and modern wealth. Mansa Musa controlled material scarcity. Elon Musk influences collective belief. One changed economies through physical abundance. The other changes economies through psychology. And perhaps that reveals something unsettling about the modern age. For thousands of years, humanity trusted objects with real weight and permanence. Gold endured wars. Gold survived empires. Gold remained valuable long after kings disappeared. But today, words themselves can move markets. A tweet, a headline, a rumor. Sometimes it almost feels as if modern civilization has transformed belief itself into currency. And perhaps that is why so many people feel anxious in the modern economy. Because deep down, humans still trust what they can hold in their hands. At the highest levels of power, wealth eventually stops being about comfort. It becomes about legacy, about leaving something behind that survives death itself. For Mansa Musa, gold was not only a symbol of power, it was a tool for shaping civilization. After returning from his pilgrimage, Musa invested enormous wealth into the city of Timbuktu. Mosques rose from the desert. Libraries filled with manuscripts appeared across the empire. Scholars traveled from distant lands to study mathematics, astronomy, law, and theology. In many ways, Mansa Musa understood that knowledge outlives gold. An empire survives longer when people remember its ideas, not only its riches. Centuries later, Elon Musk would pursue a different kind of legacy. Not libraries, not stone monuments, but the future itself. Electric vehicles, artificial intelligence, space colonization. Musk speaks often about humanity becoming a multi-planet species, because beneath the ambition of extreme wealth, there is often a deeper fear that human life is temporary, and powerful men rarely accept temporary things easily. That is why throughout history, rulers have always searched for ways to extend themselves beyond death. Some through children, some through monuments, some through technology, some through ideas. And perhaps that is the hidden truth, connecting ancient emperors and modern billionaires alike. At the very top of power, people stop asking how to become rich. They begin asking how to become unforgettable. There is a strange loneliness that often follows extreme wealth. From the outside, power appears magnificent. Golden palaces, private jets, crowds of admirers, influence beyond imagination. But history reveals something far more complicated. When people gain extraordinary power, they often become obsessed with the one thing money cannot truly defeat: time. For Mansa Musa, immortality meant permanence. Stone mosques, libraries, cities carrying his name across generations. The physical world became his answer to death. If his empire endured, then part of him would endure with it. Centuries later, Elon Musk confronts the same ancient fear in a completely different age. Artificial intelligence, space colonization, neural technology, human expansion beyond Earth itself. Modern billionaires no longer build pyramids, and they build futures. Because beneath every technological revolution, there often hides a very human anxiety. What happens when our time runs out? And perhaps that explains why so many powerful people become restless. Why enough is never truly enough. Because wealth changes the scale of human ambition. Ordinary people think about surviving the next year. Empires think about surviving centuries. At the highest levels of power, people begin fighting not only against competitors, but against mortality itself. And history shows that no amount of gold and no amount of technology has ever fully won that battle. Modern economists have tried many times to calculate the wealth of Mansa Musa. Some estimates place his fortune at nearly $400 billion in today's money, an almost incomprehensible number. Enough to surpass many modern billionaires, enough to dominate headlines even in our own century. But perhaps the real truth is even more astonishing, because Musa's wealth cannot truly be measured in dollars at all. Modern billionaires usually own shares, stock value, company valuation, digital assets tied to public confidence. Their fortunes rise and fall according to investor emotion. But Mansa Musa controlled something much deeper: the supply itself, gold mines, trade routes, physical resources the world depended on. In modern terms, it would be like owning not just a technology company, but the entire foundation beneath the global economy. And that changes everything, because when wealth is tied to belief, it can disappear. Markets panic, investors lose confidence, numbers collapse. But physical resources obey different rules. Civilizations rise around them. Wars are fought over them. Empires survive because of them. That is why comparing Mansa Musa to modern billionaires becomes so difficult. Elon Musk may possess greater numerical wealth on paper during certain moments in history, but Musa possessed something far rarer: direct control over material reality itself. And perhaps that is the hidden difference between ancient power and modern power. One was built on what the earth could produce, but the other is built on what humanity chooses to believe. No empire lasts forever. Not the empires built on gold, not the empires built on technology. And perhaps the most dangerous moment in any civilization is when people begin believing their dominance is permanent. After the death of Mansa Musa, the Mali Empire slowly weakened. The gold remained, but leadership did not. Successors fought for control, territories fragmented, trade routes became unstable, and over time, the empire that once controlled the flow of global gold began fading into history. That is the hidden weakness of systems built around extraordinary individuals. When the person disappears, the illusion of permanence often disappears with them. Centuries later, the modern world faces a different kind of fragility. The wealth surrounding Elon Musk depends heavily on confidence. Confidence in innovation, confidence in technology, confidence in endless growth. But confidence can change quickly. Markets become fearful, public opinion shifts, governments intervene, technology fails expectations, and when belief weakens, modern wealth can evaporate with astonishing speed. That may be the uncomfortable lesson history keeps repeating. Gold can disappear, empires can collapse, fortunes can vanish, because civilizations often mistake temporary dominance for eternal stability. But history rarely allows anything to remain untouchable forever. Not kings, not billionaires, not even the systems people believe are too powerful to fail. Ladies and gentlemen, whether it was the gold of the 14th century or the digital fortunes of the modern world, money has always been more than survival. It is humanity's attempt to leave a mark against time. Mansa Musa used gold to shape history. Mosques, libraries, trade routes, cities that carried his influence long after his death. Centuries later, Elon Musk uses technology to shape the future. Electric vehicles, space exploration, artificial intelligence, ideas aimed far beyond a single lifetime. Different centuries, different tools, but perhaps the same human desire beneath them both: to matter, to build something that survives after we are gone. And yet, history teaches us something humbling. No fortune lasts forever. Not gold, not stock markets, not empires. Eventually, every civilization fades into memory. Every empire becomes ruins. Every powerful name becomes part of history. Which raises a quieter question. What kind of wealth truly remains valuable in the end? At this stage of life, perhaps many of us already understand the answer. Real wealth may not be measured by gold reserves, or stock valuations, or headlines. Perhaps real wealth is measured by contribution, by wisdom passed to the next generation, by the peace a person feels when looking back on the life they built. Because in the end, the most powerful people in history were not remembered simply for what they owned, but for what they changed. So tonight, we leave behind one final question. If you had to choose between gold and vision, which one would you trust to survive the future?